Hello, friends. I decided I wanted to end my holiday YouTubing with something a little more fun than the historical origins of Arianism. I got this idea last night. One of my favorite things about the internet is that we have access now, easy access to so many live music performances from since people have had cameras that were impossible to get to when I was a teenager. So, things had to be released. You had to be able to get them on VHS, which wasn't even a thing until, I guess, probably the mid to late 1970s. So a lot of this stuff, it existed, but you just couldn't get to it, and there was no way to know that it existed. So I don't know about you, but I miss the way live music used to be when people played without click tracks. There was some use of click tracks and technology in some of the bands I like, but not most. And there was just kind of this energy. So anyway, having access to all that stuff now is eye and ear candy for people like me. So I originally thought I would start in 1971 because that was the year that I was born, but I decided to go ahead and just do it by decade. So we're going to start in 1970. There's a lot of great live recordings from the 50s and 60s. I'm not so much into that stuff. So I'm going to start with the music that I like, which a lot of it is harder rock, all different kinds of rock and other stuff too. You might be surprised by some of the things that I pick, but I'm going to pick one performance per decade. Some of them I already know what I'm going to pick because there are concerts that I've watched numerous times, or even just single songs that I've watched numerous times. And others, maybe I don't necessarily have one, so I'm going to have to do some poking around. But anyway, my first one, 1970, was an easy one for me, and that's this concert that I stumbled on by Black Sabbath live in Paris in 1970. Black Sabbath was a group that I didn't really get into until pretty late in adulthood. Actually, one Black Sabbath record as a kid, and I didn't like it. It didn't do anything for me. I had older cousins and things who were into it, but I never really listened to it. I had a friend in high school who had a Black Sabbath album, which turned out to be one of the albums with Ronnie James Dio singing. So I thought that was Black Sabbath, and I was like, yeah, that's kind of not my cup of tea. And sometimes they would play the Paranoid video and Iron Man on MTV Headbangers Ball. Those songs are fine. And in fact, I'll play, that's what they start this show with. They start it with Paranoid. But they don't capture at all kind of the range and the artistry and the swinginess and the heaviness and what was different about Black Sabbath at the time. So I have only, discovered that recently within the last 10 years. So I would consider myself a pretty big fan at this point. But I love these earliest performances of people. And this is the earliest one that I could find. There may be audio performances, but this is the one where you can see them play. Let me get myself out of the way and we'll set this up a bit. All right, it starts off with some, sound check or backstage stuff. I think they eventually kind of pan out and show the venue this is in, but there's Ozzy Osbourne dancing with a broom. Gonna brush his teeth. It gets better, trust me. Tony Iommi. So these guys have got to be in their early 20s at this point. There's Geezer Butler, Bill Ward.
They're nice, but I'm going to try the ring on it.
Come on the roadies down for a drink.
All right. All right, so they open with Paranoid. This is from their second album, and the story goes that They were short on time. These albums were recorded really, really quickly. Their first album was recorded in like 2 days. And in Geezer Butler's book, I'm still working my way through, he says that their second album, they had 5 days, which seemed like a luxury. So they did some overdubs, that sort of thing. But they kind of wrote these songs along the way, but they had to write a last song for the album on the spot because they were short on time. So they quickly came up with riffs, some lyrics, whatever, recorded it in just a matter of hours, I think. And that was Paranoid. And then they wanted to release that as a single. And so the record company changed the name of the album to Paranoid from War Pigs, which is what it was originally supposed to be. And they didn't change the artwork of the album. So there's still a guy. I'll put it up here. There's a weird blurry picture of a guy with a sword, which was supposed to be the artwork for War Pigs. And once they changed it to Paranoid, it made even less sense. But that's what it was. And it turned out to be a pretty popular song. So the album was recorded in like the spring or summer of 1970, released in September of 1970. I don't know when this show was, but it has to be in the last half of 1970, I would guess. They would play things in concerts before they were on the record, but given that this song was written as they were recording, it doesn't seem like this would be an early 1970s show, so late 1970s. But the way that they just kind of come out and attack this music, just 4 people, guitar, bass, drums, vocals, I think it's just great. We can go through here and look. If I put too much of it on, it'll get... This is NIB. He's got like... he's got 2 microphones there. It must be for some kind of vocal effect. It looks like they're kind of like duct taped together. Not sure what the point of that is. War Pigs. There, you could almost see the little appendages that Tony Iommi has on his fingers, because he cut the tips of his fingers off. And then he made these things to fit on the end out of like leather, and I think he said it was like a dispenser for like dish soap. But he made basically prosthetic fingertips, and then in order to make it easier for him to play, he would tune down and raise the action of the guitar so that the strings were kind of loose and dark, and he could get all of these really muddy, sinister, big, fat tones out of it. And that is one of the main ingredients, along with lyrics and other things that Black Sabbath did, which is where heavy metal comes from. So, talk about making some lemonade there. But he doesn't, there you can kind of see those are fake fingertips. He doesn't, Tony Iommi is not a really quick, precise shredder, and there's a physical reason for the way that he plays. There's a crowd shot. Yeah, okay. So there's the venue. Everybody's sitting. This is back in the days when people still sat.
That's an now called Fairies Wear Boots, and I'm going to play a new album.
Fairies Wear Boots. Geezer Butler had a story about where that comes from. So we recorded Paranoid at 2 studios, Regent Sounds in Soho and Island Studios in Notting Hill. We turned up in London black and blue after having had a row with a load of skinheads. Simpson had promised we'd be receiving cash on the night, but the promoter told me he'd send the check to him. I was severely pissed off and stormed out to the phone box, no cell phones back then, to call Simpson when I was surrounded by chanting skinheads, offering to kick my head in. I pretended I was having a conversation, and at an opportune moment, I dashed back into the venue before the skinheads could catch me. But when I told Tony what had happened, he went berserk, as he tended to do, and went looking for my tormentors, followed by Ozzy, Bill, and our roadie Jeff Lucas, and me. So Tony Iommi was apparently a pretty tough kid. He wasn't a kid at the time, but they all grew up in a pretty hard scrabble neighborhood. So, at least according to Geezer Butler, fighting was fairly common. We beat the Skins to shreds. Ozzy stuck a claw hammer in someone's shoulder, and I stabbed someone with a screwdriver. I don't know where they're just carrying around hammers and screwdrivers just in case they need to fix something. I don't know. And while they were rounding up reinforcements, we loaded up our gear and made our exit. Tony had a big black eye, and we had no cash to show for our troubles. However, that's where Ozzy got the inspiration for Fairies Wear Boots, because the skinheads wore great big Doc Martens that nearly reached their knees. Paranoid took 5 days to record, blah, 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 blah. Oh, there you can see his fingertips in this one. And there you go. That is my pick for 1970. I will put the link to this video down below. Maybe if you're not into Sabbath, you won't like it, but maybe you will. Give it a shot. You know, people herald Black Sabbath first album as being this big watershed, and it was in its own way, but to me, it's the next 4 albums in a row. And these albums recorded at a absolutely blistering breakneck pace while they were touring, working, that are really like one of the finest stretches in hard rock and maybe in rock music in general, like stretches of creativity and energy. So if you like harder music and you have never looked at Black Sabbath, please listen to all of their first albums until they kick Ozzy out in a row, and tell me what you think, because they are really something. So that is my pick for my favorite live show that is available on YouTube from 1970. Enjoy. Bye-bye.